Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest, Peter A. Colter. Peter was born in Utica, New York, where I was born, and raised in the small village of Clinton, where the quiet streets held both beauty and chaos. A lifelong musician, writer, and creative soul, Peter found expression through art and music, even in his darkest moments. He has lived with manic depression and bipolar disorder for most of his life, weathering storms that many never see and never hear. After writing many screenplays, he decided to start working on novels. His writing comes from a place of raw emotion, real experiences, and renewed hope. He lives surrounded by the family he cherishes and continues to grow in faith each day. His hope is that his work reaches others who feel unseen, unheard, and lost. Peter, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. It's a pleasure having you on the program today.
Thank you so much, man. I'm really excited to be on this one. When we were doing our intake conversation that we had a couple weeks ago, it was just so light, and I felt the care that you had with this. So I'm actually very excited to be on the show today. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And with your journey speaks to me because of what seems like a past lifetime ago. I was an addictions counselor, clinical supervisor at the McPike Addictions Treatment Center in Utica, New York. I worked with many individuals who had substance use and mental health issues, many creative individuals, many great people who basically had difficulties stopping the dance with addiction, and for those who struggle periodically, with their mental wellness. And these were great creative individuals. They taught me a lot about me and taught me a lot about what addiction treatment was all about. So that part of your journey, we're going to get into that, really resonated with me.
Yeah, it's a tough walk. And I was very fortunate to have gotten away from those addictions, and a lot of people don't. And it's sad, but at the same time, it's sobering. It reminds me to stay away from those kind of things.
Yeah, and tell us a little more about you, about your experiences that have shaped who you are today and what you do today.
Okay, so I was born deaf. I had 13 operations to gain my hearing. I had my tonsils and my adenoids removed. And I also had permanent and semi-permanent tubes put in my ears that would, occasionally fall out. So I would hear some things sometimes, but mostly would be like garbled noises. And so dealing with that growing up and the constant pain that came with the swelling of my eardrums and the popping of my eardrums consecutively throughout, the years, actually kept me out of school. I missed a whole 2 school years in a row because I had 3 operations within that, time period. So things were difficult. It was hard to understand people. And, going through that was hard. I also had, kind of a troubling home life, not to go much more into that, but it was rough to go through some things. And when I was able to gain my hearing, I gained my hearing after the operations. I had gotten a drum kit, and I played the drum kit. And after a while, the doctors had said that it actually caused vibrations. The vibrations from the drums caused hair inside my ears to grow, which eventually helped me with gaining my hearing permanently. And so the first thing I wanted to do was play in a band, because I was like, I don't know why I was musically inclined, but I felt like I was, even though I couldn't hear it. My father had got me a drum set, and I kind of just knew how to play it. I never took lessons or anything. I sat down, I knew how to put it together. I knew how to play it. It was like second nature to me. And back then, you didn't have YouTube. You didn't have these things to kind of sort of teach you things like you do now. Like information is so readily available now. But back then to learn those kind of things was an undertaking. For me, it was simple. So I started playing, and then I started touring with a band, and I was playing bars at the age of 14. And with that comes, drugs and a very loose kind of lifestyle, let's go here and party and hang out with the band and hang out with, the people that have drugs. And if you're tired, here's some drugs. If you're, upset about something, here's some drugs. And it was kind of just sort of like put in my face. And not to my own reasoning that I would say that I didn't choose to do that. I did. I chose that. And I can sit there and say that it was because of the pain I had gone through and I was masking it, and the relationship with my father that I didn't really have, and those kind of things. But really, I think it was because I enjoyed that, right? I mean, when it comes down to it, you're young. You're not thinking about your future family or your finances or being alive to make it to that point, to realize anything about your life.
Yeah.
So you're just living fast. You're living fast, live free, die hard type thing. Like, I'm going to go do whatever I want to. And if I die doing it, well, who cares? And I had a very big part of that who cares of dying thing, because I was always depressed all the time. So I was also born with colic. So I had emotional problems from the moment I came into the world. And they diagnosed me with manic depression and what they called explosive anger disorder, but it was really bipolar. But when I was diagnosed, bipolar wasn't a thing. It was taboo to say bipolar, or at least they hadn't come up with the tag bipolar, which is somebody who's bipolar would tell you, yeah, I guess I'm bipolar, or I guess I'm just human. Like everybody who has emotions. I mean, you go up and down. No human being is steady straight all the time. Everybody has their own things and their own problems that they go through. I think I just didn't have that outlet to have somebody bounce back to me what I was going through or how to help me, even though I'd seen so many psychiatrists. I'd been on every antidepressant that was available at the time, lithium, Wellbutrin, Zoloft, Prozac even. Now I'm on Depakote-ER, and I've been on Depakote-ER since I was 14. So I went through 2 years of just going back and forth between different drugs. And a lot of them made me, kind of zombie-ish. Some of them made me more suicidal. And that, that also plays with your brain too. It changes chemistry inside your brain. So that also affected me, and that kind of carried on with me throughout my whole entire touring life. And I was touring until I was 21 years old. I mean, I had just made my whole entire life music.
Yep.
I had gone through a couple of different bands, and I had played really big shows and was around really big crowds. And while that was my dream, and it has always been my dream to be a musician, I mean, at heart, I am a drummer. At heart, I'm a guitar player. You know what I mean? Not a writer. That's the funny thing about what happened to me. But because of that, it changed that part of me, And so I stopped playing shows when I had my first son. I was 21, and I stopped playing first shows for a little while, but I didn't really see him much. And so I started playing shows again, and I got heavier into drugs. And at that time, I started drinking alcohol. Before that, I wasn't a big drinker. I didn't really like alcohol. People would get drunk at parties and stuff, they'd act stupid, or what I would see being sober as being either ridiculous or extremely funny, right? Because I'm young and I'm not drunk, but these people are acting like idiots, right? So it was entertaining. But then when I got older and I wasn't seeing my son so much, I became an alcoholic because of it. And again, I say because of it, but really it was me running to something that would make me feel something different than I did, because I was hurting. I missed him, I mean, that's something I don't ever talk about actually in any podcast. I've never said that before. Actually, I'm saying that now because we're getting into it, and it's the truth. I guess that is the reason why I started drinking so much. I never really put it together until this moment. So anyways, I drank for 20 years. I became an alcoholic from the age of 21 to, 40, about 39. I was in and out of rehabs. I'd gone to McPike. And McPike actually was a great facility to me. I actually liked it at McPike. The first place I went was Conifer Park, which is in Schenectady. And that's more of like I felt like a really rich when I went there because it's such a huge like ground, it's like there's a gym and there's a pool and there's a this and there's a this.
Yep.
And it really takes you out of that needing drugs. And I didn't realize that either until I left, that what I was leaving was the ease of having life without the drugs because everything was there for me. I didn't have to worry about, food or room and board or, where I was going to get drugs because there were none. Everybody around me was sober, right? And I was away from my problems. So when I was supposed to leave that first rehab in Conifer Park, I'd stay 28 days and that was the program. And I begged them to let me stay. I just didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go back to my life. I knew that if I did, I would start smoking weed again because that was my big thing when I was younger was marijuana. It was like, I was a pothead. And I used it to mask how I felt. That's just, I think that's just normal with people. And I think as a society, if we start to realize that, things will be a little bit easier. That's what people use drugs for, to begin with. They use it to mask something. They use it to deal with a problem. And then their body either becomes, dependent on it, or they just really actually start to like how they feel on it. And that's why they stay there, right? And that's why it's hard to give it up, right? I stopped drinking, so I'm 3 years sober now. Before all this, I tried killing myself a whole bunch of times, right? So I was in mental institutions in and out of my teen years, I would say about 6 or 7 times, right? I'd stayed at St. Luke's, I stayed at another hospital in Rochester, and I was around a lot of different institutions like that to try to find out what was wrong with me. And that was the thing. Everybody wanted to know what's wrong with him. What's wrong with him? Why is he trying to kill himself? Why is he 12 and he's trying to kill himself? Because that's when I started trying to kill myself is when I was like 12 years old. And that's because of a chemical imbalance in my brain. I was just depressed. I didn't hate anybody. I hated myself. I didn't hate the world. I just hated myself. And I really couldn't explain why. And even when people would ask me, I still never had an answer. I just was I had to hate myself. I don't know why. I don't know what it was. And I think about it now and I still can't explain why I felt that way about myself. Probably because of the chemical imbalance. I mean, that's really the only answer I can go back to reassure myself that I'm human. Yeah. Thank God for that, right? So anyways, I go to this trip to pick up my godsons, who had just graduated from the Marines. And we hadn't seen them for about 9 months. Everybody was ecstatic to go and to see them. We'd all missed them very much. They're very close to us. We went out to South Carolina and everybody's having a great time. The hotel is fantastic. Everybody's living it up, jumping in the swimming pools and doing that whole thing as a family. And I was miserable. I hated my life and I had no reason to. I realize that now, but then at that point, I hated my life. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I had given up. That night, everybody had went to bed. I went out on the balcony and I said, this is it. I'm done. Maybe I can make it look like an accident. Maybe I can somehow throw myself off this balcony and my family can maybe get some kind of money out of this and be better off. That was the thought I had was my kids would be better off without me. It was constantly in my head. And not because of any way that I was to them, but just because I wasn't available. I was always sitting in the dark, crying and upset all the time, just all the time. That was my life for years. I stopped going out. I stopped seeing people. I became a recluse and I was just depressed all the time. And so as I'm on the balcony and I'm ready to jump off, I guess I had what I look back at now and call a last ditch effort, that survival instinct that tells your brain and your body to say, no, hold on one more moment, right? Don't jump off the balcony, right? And so in that moment, I screamed out to a God I didn't believe in, right? I'm a logical thinker and I always was a logical thinker. And to me, the idea of a Jesus or a God figure just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, right? And I think that's part because of how I grew up and all those things. But I realize now that it was because it was supposed to be that way. I wasn't supposed to figure it out until that moment. My whole life had come down to that moment on that belt. And this is now 2 years ago. Okay.
Was that November 14th?
Yes.
2024.
Yes, it was. Yeah. 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 Wow. But even when you say that, the memory of that day, it brings such joy and love back to my heart, because my life was changed that day completely. In that moment, I'm screaming out to him and I'm saying, I don't understand why you would do this. And I don't understand why you would put me through this. And I'm saying things to him that I realize now I shouldn't have said, because now I know. But I said a lot of things to him I shouldn't have said. And I blamed him for a lot of things that I realize now it wasn't his fault. He didn't do those things to me. I just didn't realize that. And so I told him, I said, if there's something for me, you better show it to me. Like I'm sitting there telling God he better do something for me, And instead of being upset with me, he did. He changed my heart. He changed my heart completely. All the anger and anxiety and depression, everything I ever felt just right out of my body. And I profusely cried that whole entire trip, the rest of that trip. I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle the feeling of love that I got, like not the word, not the chemical concoction in your brain, but the love that Jesus had for me. I had never felt it in my life. And to this moment, I still strive to get back to that feeling. Yeah. But that 1 second to allow me to know how important I was changed my whole entire life. It changed everything about my life. I stopped hating myself. Like, I just couldn't stop profusely crying. Everybody else on the trip, they wake up. I'm still out on the balcony. Here it is, like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning because they want to get up and go swimming early, right? I'm out on the balcony just crying myself, extremely happy. They don't know what the heck is going on. They have never seen me like that. And so they're like, Dad, what's wrong? What's going on? Like, what's happened to you? And I couldn't muster the words out to say his name. I couldn't say Jesus. I just couldn't. I felt like I was just so unworthy of saying his name because I had pushed him away for so long. I felt shame about it, but I was able to communicate a little bit. My wife ended up telling me, she said, you had an encounter with him. He saved you. That's what happened to you.
And Peter, you're not the first one that's had a similar type of encounter with God.
Right.
I've talked to other people on this podcast who have told me that in times of trouble and times of transition, they actually heard the voice of God guiding them. Neil Donald Walsh wrote Conversations with God and Friendship with God, and he was in a dire straits, pretty much like you, but for different reasons. Yeah. I think he was down on his luck, and he finally, like you, just screamed out. God, why are you doing this to me? What's going on? I don't believe you're here. I mean, that's what he said. That's certainly was different from your experience, but obviously then what happened is he goes, you're the voice of God. And then from there, he had developed that friendship. And, he wrote a couple of different books around those conversations. When we talk about addiction anyway, we talk about spiritual awakenings.
Yeah.
We talk about, I've had individuals I've worked with say that they had a spiritual awakening, whether it was in jail, whether it was just that they had so many crises pile up within a short period of time.
Yeah.
That they had to take a look at themselves and they said, something needs to change. I can't keep going on like this. So however that spiritual awakening is defined, it's real.
No, there's nothing that would have changed my life. Nothing. At that moment, I could see my kids. I could see my kids for what they were, what they meant to me. You know what I mean? Because the depression was gone. I could see everything else in my life and how important those things were because my depression was gone. I didn't hear anything, but I felt it. And I think for everybody that does have like you said, this moment or whatever, it's different. I think it matters to that person, right? Some people need to hear him. Some people need to feel him. I was always such an emotionally driven person because of, my depression and stuff, that feeling the turn in my heart. That's what I felt. I felt like something turned my heart around. Like, that's the only way I can describe it, because for so long I felt like this weight here in my chest, and it was just gone. And it's been gone since. I haven't had to worry about being depressed or sad or feel sorry for myself or any of those things. I was able to write now 4 books and 22 episodes of a TV show that's about to be filmed next month. And none of these things I could have done without him. He changed my heart so that I could do it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because I asked him to, because I accepted that he was real
Mhm.
and that he loved me.
Yeah.
And I think that was the most important thing, was to understand that he loved me instead of turning me away when I said all these horrible things to me, which a human being would have done. A human being would have been like, how dare you talk to me like that? I'm never talking to you again. But not Jesus. Jesus listened to me and then made me feel how much he cared about me in my life. And that in turn made me care about my life and care about him and love him. And so from that moment, in between the crying, I had this story going on in my head. This I don't know what it was. It just kept on playing in my head over and over and over again. And I wasn't really a writer. I tried writing screenplays before, but they were like reboots of popular IPs in the horror genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Freddy Krueger, a couple other ones, and they were bloody and they were gory and they were fantastic, right? From a horror standpoint and from a script standpoint, but they were dark and they were very, bloody and gory. So I had this idea, and so I started writing it on the trip. And I wrote it into about 40 pages of a screenplay. And then suddenly I got this feeling like this isn't what I should be doing. Write it into a book. And I don't know how to write a book. I'd never written a novel, right? So I have no idea how to even approach that. I taught myself how to write a screenplay, 4-minute screenplays, how to describe things in action sequences and character and dialogue driven, but not write it out as a book. So I was scared to do it, but as soon as I started doing it, I just kind of it just came out. Like, I didn't really have to focus, really. I just knew the story. And from South Carolina all the way back, I knew the story. It never changed. It always stayed the same. The characters were the same. The setting was the same. And I knew it from beginning to end and end to beginning. Like a movie I had watched 900,000 times, right? That's how vivid it was to me. There was no way I could ever forget that story, right? It just came out of me. The moment I finished writing it, I forgot it. It's the weirdest. And I realized that after I wrote it to help myself. I wrote it to help myself get through the battle of my faith back and forth, and deal with the nightmares of my own suicide that I used to have all the time that would keep me awake, to where I was put on medication. I'm still on the same medication to stop me from dreaming, to stop me from reaching REMs, so that I don't have night terrors anymore, because I used to sleepwalk and have really violent nightmares. I realized that after I wrote it, that it helped me. Mm-hmm. And so then, I wrote The Endless Wall, and now it is what it is. Barnes & Noble has picked it up, and it's helped a lot of people. It's gained me a lot of connections with people I would have never met. And what I mean by that is people that are struggling with things, because I put my information in there. I put it out there, and every podcast I'm on, every radio appearance, everything I do, I always outreach to people and let them know where I am, tell them to contact me, because I've been through it. And, sometimes people just need someone to listen, and when you can genuinely care, you can genuinely help someone.
Absolutely. And I just want to backtrack for a minute, because I need to tell the audience how I knew the day that you had the epiphany with God was November 14, 2024. For the sake of transparency, Peter, and for my audience, I watched a good portion of your interview with Jacob Lasher for The Other Side.
Oh, yes.
And he had mentioned that date, and I wanted to make sure that we had talked about that. So I wanted you to know how I actually knew that exact day because I wrote it down as a reminder for me to ask you about that.
Yeah.
The other thing, I know you've been through several rehabs. You've survived 7 suicide attempts. Personally, I'm glad you're here to talk about all of this.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I am too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the thing is that individuals I've talked to who have been suicidal, they think that if they end their lives, they're not going to be a burden to anybody anymore. But in reality,
Oh, it creates so much pain.
Yeah,
it creates so much pain, unneeded too.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. And I've had a couple of people say, who's going to miss me if I'm gone? I said, look, I'm going to miss you if you're gone. If you do something that you take your life, I'm going to miss you because you are a part of me now. You shared your story with me. If you're one of my students, if one of my students who was suicidal, I said, look, you're part of my extended family. If you end up taking your own life, it's going to sadden me tremendously because I'm losing a member of the family.
Yeah.
And I think people who talk about to somebody that they want to complete suicide, they're looking for somebody to talk them out of it. They're looking for somebody, give me a reason to go on for another moment. Give me a reason to delay my decision for another day.
Yeah, they wouldn't say it.
No. I believe, if you look at humanity, I look at humanity sometimes as one big ocean. And we collectively, each human being makes up a drop that goes into that ocean and creates that wave. If one human in that wave of humanity takes their life, that wave is forever affected.
Yeah.
So
and that's true.
Yeah. So I tell individuals, be that drop of humanity that stays, not the drop that leaves.
That's fantastic. I mean, I've had a couple of friends kill themselves. I actually stopped going to school because my friend killed himself. That's why I dropped out of school. And I wish they would have came to me and talked to me about it. When I look back at it, it hurts because I wish they would have talked to me, but they didn't. And that's not something that I can put so much of my energy into, but I can remember them for who they were and how much they meant to me. And so I move forward with it because there's really nothing else you can do. But if you're thinking about suicide and stuff like that, it's not all it's cracked up to be, And it's hard to tell people that. It's hard to tell people that, especially somebody who isn't depressed anymore. I had my encounter. That's what happened to me. I understand that there's people that don't believe in that, and I didn't either. So I can't be, a hypocrite or anything like that, but I can listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what all of us as humans have, is the capacity to have compassion.
Yep.
Some of us just don't show it, right? And I think if a society, us as a whole, would do that, I think we would be able to get over a lot of our internal mental illnesses.
Well, and when we focus on being listeners, we're holding space for somebody's stories.
That's right.
And for somebody who is like yourself, who has come from, very adverse circumstances, very difficult family dynamics, and early experience doesn't matter. That shapes what happens to us in later life. We have to establish ourselves as listeners to hold space for somebody's stories, because for somebody who came from circumstances like yourself and adverse circumstances, they've never been listened to. You've maybe been talked at, and any feelings that you had may not have been validated. So as a former therapist, my first objective was to listen to the person's story.
Yeah.
Establish myself as a listener, get to understand the person, and then go from there. Because that person may not have had an opportunity to be heard without being cut off, without being questioned, without having the validity of their own story being called into question. So
that's another thing. I think it's like when you're younger, you start to understand those kind of things. Like when you become a teenager, everybody suffers through depression, right? And there's not one person in the world that has never been depressed. So if there's a person out there it's just not possible, right? It's a human emotion. It happens. But for those people that do go through that, it's a lot harder to understand, like, things will be different someday.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to get through this, and I'll feel differently about this. Because if you talk to the 13-year-old who's just got broken up with, right? It's hard to go through a breakup when you're young. I mean, I was with somebody for 3 years, and to this day, I still love her. I wish the best for her. She's a fantastic person, but it affects you. Those things affect you because you're so sensitive when you're younger. You're young and you're experiencing these things for the first time. Like your first heartbreak is one that lasts forever, like your first love or the one that got away or whatever they call it. Those things, they affect you. And it's hard to tell a teenager, hey, you know what, just get through this. You'll move on. There's other fish in the sea, or, you're better off without it or whatever, right? It's hard to do that with teenagers. And that's what happened to my friend. That's the reason why he took his life, was because of that. And it's hard to be like, okay, well, how do I talk to teenagers about that? Yeah. And like you said, sometimes you just don't. You listen, right? And that's the capacity that we all as human beings have, is to listen. But if we don't care, then it doesn't do anything. You can pretend to listen all day, but do you care? Because if you care, then that person that you're talking to is going to know that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Let's bear witness to each other's stories, but do it with compassion and do it with interest.
Yeah. And it's important.
Now, you mentioned The Endless Fall. That is it's a fictional account, but basically it's related to a lot to your own experiences with your own challenges with addiction and mental health. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes. Yeah, that's true. I did take aspects of my life and put it into the main character, Ivy. So her mother is an alcoholic. Obviously, I was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And she has nightmares of her own suicide that are extremely violent. She tries to kill herself, very much like me, my story. And she also has her battle with faith, her not believing in God, her seeing her life be that way, and why did she deserve that? Those kind of questions. Like, why are you doing this to me? Why do I have to be poor? Why do I have to take care of my younger brother while you're drinking and selling your body to get more alcohol? I mean, these are things, that happen in the book. And it's just, again, it's tough, right? It's tough. And that's why I labeled it and I wrote it for a young adult audience. Yep. So that era or that, age group could understand that those problems, they exist. They definitely exist. But there's perspective as well. She changes her perspective. So things start to change in her life, right? But just because of that it doesn't mean that her problems go away. So she has to battle back and forth with her faith and protect her younger brother at the same time. And it's a realistic story. It doesn't have the ending that people wanted it to have, I guess, but it wasn't supposed to. It's supposed to be realistic. If I wrote it off to where, Ivy walks off into the sunset and her whole life is better and she never has to think about her faith or taking care of her brother or anything like that, there would have been no point to the book. And I realize that now, And like I said, that story was it was put into my head. Like I knew it from front to back, and it came out. I didn't sit down and write an outline like most authors would do, which I realize now. I just started writing it. It was like, Chapter 1, let's call it this. And then I just started writing it. And it became what it became. And I'm very proud of it. I'm glad that it was able to help all the people it's been able to help so far. It's being looked at to be turned into a movie next fall. So I think these are things that were supposed to happen, because it never would have happened without that moment.
No.
I probably wouldn't even be here. I think I would have eventually probably killed myself, which is so horrible and remorseful and sad to say because my kids are so important to me. But the depression was it was gut wrenching just to even think about how I never want to go back to feeling that. And I don't want anybody to feel it. It's hell.
Well, there's a strong correlation between clinical depression and suicide attempts. And completed suicide anyway.
Yeah.
But What ultimately do you want individuals to take away from the endless fall, Peter?
That faith isn't easy. It's a hard road to walk on, but it's a road that will pay dividends.
Yep.
It will help you. Like there used to be a saying, it'll work if you work it or something like that.
Yeah.
Or work it because you're worth it, I get, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's some of it too. Because while you're reading it, you're going through like her like horrible abuse. And so it's very emotional. Like within the first couple of pages, you're crying. It's hard to deal with in the beginning of the book. And it has to be that way. To establish the character in such a concrete way, it has to be done that way. It has to be emotional. It has to be driven. It has to catch your attention real quick, and it has to make you care about that character. And the best way that I could do that was, evoking emotion with the reader, right? I think what it ultimately teaches is that the faith isn't an easy road. It's a tough one, but there's a great purpose in it.
Yeah. Sometimes our faith has to be greater than our fear.
Oh, definitely. It always has to be. In my opinion, my faith always has to be greater than my fear, because if I have a fear, like with the show, if I fear that the show isn't going to work, then I'm not having faith in God taking care of it for me, right? Because I have to lay these things at his feet. I can't say, hey, you know what? I'm going to write this next book and I don't want you around for it. Take a seat. Let's see how well I write. Let's see what happens with that, because it's just not everything I do it has to involve him. So that's how I get rid of my fear. I give it to him. That's why I don't worry.
Yeah. I threw coincidence out of my vocabulary a long time ago. I don't think anything happens to us by chance.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think what happened to you on November 14, 2024 was destined to happen at the moment it happened.
Yep.
And that helped you discover a whole new side of you that you're using now to help others through your writing, through your filmmaking projects. And, growth doesn't occur when things are going well. Growth occurs on a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And what you described in your book, The Endless Fall, those dynamics that you described with abuse and neglect and everything, addiction, and I mean, that mirrors many, many backgrounds of individuals that I dealt with who came from those types of similar environments.
Yeah.
And some were worse than what you've described in that book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And, but it's realistic. It isn't pretty.
No.
But it's realistic.
It's realistic, yeah.
And you can't sugarcoat dysfunction. You can't sugarcoat the effects that individuals have as a result of growing up in unhealthy environments. It's like, this is what happened.
Yeah.
This is my story. This is how I got through it. Is it pretty? No.
No.
But is it real? Is it transformative? Absolutely. And that's what we have to focus on, is the end process.
Yeah. I think when you sugarcoat it, I think people start to accept it as normal.
Yeah.
And it's not normal. It's not normal to slap your kid into a wall. It's not normal to spend all your money on drugs instead of food for your child. It's just that those are not normal things, but they've become normal. Society has made them normal by turning a blind eye to it, or just saying, well, we'll just accept it. It's sad. It's sad. But yeah.
Tell me about your creative writing process. Is it very intuitive? I mean, do you do a formal outline, or just something comes into your head and it starts developing? You develop it mentally, and all of a sudden you just put pen to paper.
Yep. That would be the second one. I'm a what I call a on the spot writer, I guess. So I will, like, for each one of the books, I'll say, okay, what should I write about? First, I do that. I always ask what I should be writing about. And within a couple of moments, I get an idea, and then I just run with it. I usually start from the most emotional part that I can think of the quickest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll usually start from a very emotional place. And then the story will kind of sort of write itself. Screenplays are a little different. only because I've been commissioned to write some screenplays. I'm writing actually a screenplay for The Four Horsemen by Bruce Martin, which is another author from around here. And that's almost done. But so for those things, like you have to read it and then you have to take that information and you have to find a concise way to put that on film that people can see, because reading is one thing, but seeing something is different, right? So you have to write the screenplay in a way that a person is watching it, which is much different than writing a novel. But so my writing process is kind of just like, with screenplays, I'll either have things that I have to write because I'm commissioned to do it, or I'll come up with simple log lines, very simple synopsis. So a woman walks into a store and forgets her purse in the car, only to realize that inside of her purse is a life-saving tool or something, right? And then I'll go off of that and I'll say, well, what do I want out of this? What's going to be so emotional about this piece in her purse that matters, right? So I give it a little bit of thought, but really I just kind of sort of just write it. And then, I'll read it over. If I don't like it, I'll go back and I'll change what I don't like. And then I'll read it again. And if I don't think it's good at all, then I usually just put it in a folder and start something new, right? But I've been very lucky to have just kind of been able to write things and not really had to push anything into a folder or, worry about anything. I've been able to write, and that's a godsend,
Yeah. Well, The Endless Fall, I mean, you lived that, so it just,
and my second book, Abused, is even more specific to my childhood. It's actually literally journal entries from my childhood. The first 54 pages of it or so is, and then the rest of it, I had to create a story to finish the book, because you can't just write journal entries. It's like, I mean, you could, but it's been done. Go Ask Alice did that, and Go Ask Alice is fantastic. If anybody on this is listening to this and has not read that book, read it. It's fantastic. All of my kids read it for school, and they are all happy that they did that. That book will teach you a lot about drugs and life, growing up. I mean, it's a fantastic book. It's actually one of my favorite books. But so I just kind of sort of write. Sometimes I put on music. Most of the time I'll put on headphones, but then I'll realize, like, when I go back to read dialogue and I'm listening to somebody sing, I'm kind of like, okay, hold on. I had to turn this off, because I'm like reading this and hearing this at the same time. It's like, it's distracting. But when I'm writing, I don't really care about it. So I put music on and I kind of just chill, and I've been able to just have the freedom to write.
And you being a musician, a drummer, certainly, knowing what I know about you now, is an appropriate choice. I mean, drummer keeps the beat.
Oh, yeah.
You're close to the earth.
Yep.
My favorite drummer of all time was the late, great Neil Peart of Rush.
I knew you were going to say that, because he's fantastic. He is one of the best rudimented drummers in the world. I mean, his fills and his like sound effects reels and everything that he does. I mean, he doesn't even need a band, because of all the electronic pads he has. He just deal, and then he's just drumming the whole entire time. Neil Peart is fantastic drummer.
Yeah. Plus, he's a great writer too.
Neil Peart. Yeah, he's good.
He's a great writer too, and he's had his own tragedies in his life, and he's just a brilliant writer, a brilliant musician. I still go back to watch the Rush video of the '80s of Tom Sawyer. And just watch him just move air like nobody's ever moved air before.
No, he's fantastic. He was always growing all the time. Like, even if he fell a little bit, he still grew from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great story to watch. If anybody gets a chance, watch the story of Neil Peart. It's you'll find a lot of good things that you can pretty much relate to with his story. And he did a lot. He did a lot more than people, I think, know, really.
And he did. And he was an adventurer, among other things. But if you look at it, what you've done parallels what he did, as far as you being a drummer, having your own challenges. His set of challenges were different, but you've come out of it better. You've come out of it with purpose. You've come out of it with resolve. And it's been transformative, as it was for him. So
Yeah.
There's parallels. So, you've had a lot of exciting developments in your writing career, your filmmaking career. Something that's recently manifested is Carrion Creek. Tell our
Yep.
audience about that project, why you're so excited about it.
Carrion Creek is a project that I started with my co-owner, business partner, Patrick Hale, who's an award-winning director. It's a retro horror anthology that deals with mental health. It deals with drug abuse. It deals with things that go bump in the night. It's got its own kind of monster of the week kind of format sometimes. But of course, it's an anthology, so each episode is different. He writes more psychological type stuff and creature feature kind of things that will relate to family trauma and childhood neglect and those different kind of things, and like spiritual type things. I also write about the spiritual stuff, but mine are more like drug abuse and, again, family trauma, childhood trauma. And we tried to take those things and put them into a half an hour episode, 22 episodes per season, and just try to sort of make people relive the nostalgia of the 90s and the 80s and kind of go back to that time when they had shows that were that long. You would watch one for a week, and then the next week, instead of having like 8 episodes released on one day and it's one storyline. And I think him and I kind of just were like, let's do something different. And it's kind of sort of like Tales from the Crypt meets Twin Peaks, and with like a little bit of unsolved mysteries thrown in there. I'm really excited about it because the episodes are just fantastic. I mean, his writing is top notch. He really knows how to evoke a lot of fear in his writing. And it's good to have somebody that can match that kind of level with me, with the emotions and the fear, and put it all together and just come up with this insane world that we see as like a purgatory. This Carrion Creek place is kind of like a purgatory. Some souls go quietly, some souls don't, some souls rest, some souls fight. You know, it's basically formulated onto a town that has a lot of mental health issues. And so we're excited about it because we really think that it's going to be impactful for a lot of people that are suffering, especially through like mental illnesses or depression or drug abuse or childhood trauma. We gear it towards those. And there's a couple of fun ones thrown in there, but really we want to help people with it. We want to try to go back to the day where a horror story had meaning. And it wasn't just let's throw some red paint on the wall and some dismembered body parts and call it a movie, you know? I think we wanted to bring some je ne sais quoi back to the forefront of TV. And so, yeah, I'm super excited about it. And it starts filming in August. The Kickstarter is up now. And we've got a great producer in Mira Chelik and a great DP in Sean Stroth, he works at the University of American Department of Photography. And he's super good at what he does. He's great with lighting. He's great with what he does. And our producer is she's fantastic. She's had a bunch of projects under her belt. And it's just, I was just online one night and he reached out to me in like a writer's forum and he was like, hey, I know that you wrote these books and I'm just thinking about doing like some kind of something. You want to see, let's write a script together. And I said, let's write a show together. And he was like, that's awesome. Like, what kind of show? Horror show? Okay. Anthology? Yeah, let's do that. And what are we going to call it? Carrion Creek. Perfect. And we had this all kind of figured out within like 2 hours. And then we both started writing. We wrote the whole first season in 5 weeks. We do a table read every Friday. And we're now into writing the second season. So we're extremely hard driven like workers. Like we like to write and get things done. I met a good friend in him. And I think that was also God doing that. You know what I mean? Like you said, there's no real coincidences, you know, and I believe that too. I think everything happened like it was supposed to because it was supposed to. Because if it didn't, I wouldn't have cared about it. I wouldn't have been in that low spot to actually give my life to him, to Jesus. I would have never done that. I would have never gave up to him. No. And that's what changed my life. And so everything else is not coincidence to me. It is purpose. And so super excited about everything that he has in store for me. And I'm grateful for my life now.
You're doing a lot of great things. You've done a lot of great things, and I can see you continuing to make your mark in a very impactful way, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to help people. Like, I want to bring people with me.
Yep.
I want to take people and put them up above me and say, hey, look, you got up there. I love seeing you up there, and I'm fine just staying here. I just want to grab people and say, hey, here's your shot. Here's your shot. Get up there. Get up there. And if I can be put in the position to do that and give back to the poor, because it's important, and raise awareness for rehabs and mental institutions and just the mental health community in general.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I want to do. I want to speak to people. I want to help teens. I want to make shows, and I want to write books, and I want to do this. But it all comes down to really, I just want to help people.
Yep. And that's obvious that that's your passion at this point. That's your purpose. So,
for sure.
Peter, one of the last questions I want to ask you before we wrap up today is if you could leave our audience with one thing that you want them to remember from our conversation today, what would that be?
Don't give up. It's a lot easier to give up than it is to go on. And sometimes the hardest things to do in life are the right things to do.
Yep.
So don't give up. And if you need somebody to talk to, I'm always around. Search up my name, Peter Colter. You will find me and I will answer you. Like, I literally will. I always do. I answer everybody. I think that's my purpose. I think that's what I was spared for. I was saved for that reason, is to help people, I think.
I agree with that. And that leads into my final question, which is if people want to get in touch with you, purchase your books, find out more about what's going on in your life, what's the best way for them to do that?
Facebook. You find me on Facebook. I have 2 accounts on there, Peter A. Colter and Peter Colter. I'm also on Instagram at peter.colter. I'm also on TikTok, but I don't really ever use it, but I'm still on there. My books are both on Amazon and on barnesandnoble.com. My books are also in Barnes & Noble in New Hartford, New York, and in Liverpool, New York, and Book Arts and more. And I'm online. You can always find me. Don't hesitate. If you're going through something or you just want to say hi or whatever, reach out. I'm always around. I'll make time. It's the little things that matter. Sometimes just listening to somebody is more important than doing pretty much anything else for the rest of your day. So I'm here.
And trust me, audience, he is. I mean, I've reached out to him and he's gotten back to me like, within the day. So he gets back timely and he treats everybody as if they're the most important person at that particular moment.
Yeah, because they are. They really are. I mean, if they're reaching out to me, then they're important. So whatever they're going through is more important than what I'm doing. So, and people around me, the people I work with and all that stuff, they know. Yeah. If somebody's trying to get a hold of me and they get a hold of me, I will put whatever aside to talk to these people because it's important. It matters. Mm-hmm. So yes, reach out and I will answer you.
Peter, thank you so much for just a great conversation today. I truly enjoyed it and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on. I really, really loved being on this show. I really look forward to talking with you again. And we got to go get that cup of coffee. We never did that.
We do.
We should get some coffee and talk about Neil Peart and every other drummer and musician we love. And maybe there's another show there. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. I'll take you up on that. I'll be in touch. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I am your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.